Just picture this for a second, right? It is 7 p.m. on a Tuesday evening.
The absolute worst time of the week.
Exactly. The absolute worst. You have just battled through the evening traffic, the constant honking, that terrible bumper-to-bumper crawl. Or maybe you've just logged off from your laptop after a wonderfully endless string of video calls.
And you are quite simply exhausted to your very bones.
And to your bones. Your mind is still running at 100 miles an hour, isn't it? You are replaying that slightly passive-aggressive email you received at 4 p.m. You're doing the mental math for the electricity bill. Or maybe you are just dreading the sheer volume of tasks waiting for you the moment you wake up tomorrow.
You drop your bag and you just want the sofa.
Yes, you are longing, quite desperately I might add, for just 5 minutes of peace on your sofa, just to sit and stare at a blank wall. But there, standing squarely between you and your much-needed rest, is the kitchen sink.
Ah, yes, the sink.
And see, it is not just a sink, is it? It is an absolute mountain of dirty dishes. You got the cot high with the stubborn oil stains from last night.
The plates stacked in a way that literally defies gravity.
The tea strainers, the coffee mugs crowding the edges. In that exact moment, we all know the feeling, don't we? A deep, heavy sigh escapes you. The resentment just flares up in your chest.
You genuinely think, why do I have to do this? I just did this yesterday.
I just did it. This mundane, utterly repetitive chore feels less like a responsibility and more like an unfair punishment at the end of a very, very long day.
It is a universally understood frustration, I tell you. That feeling of being completely trapped by the sheer monotony of household maintenance. It is something we all share. You stand there, you look at that yellowing sponge, you look at the dishwashing liquid, and you think, it never ends.
It literally never ends.
And the core issue here, actually, the reason it causes such visceral frustration is that it feels like a barrier to your actual life. It feels like an obstacle course you have to run through just to get to your rest, or to your family time, or to whatever it is you actually want to be doing.
Exactly that. Okay, let's unpack this, because what we are going to explore today in this deep dive is going to completely upend that exact feeling.
Completely change the paradigm.
Yes. The sources we have in front of us today, and we have a really brilliant stack of articles, research papers, and books here, they present a truly fascinating collection of insights. We are drawing from ancient spiritual wisdom, specifically Zen traditions, and bridging it directly with modern neuroscience.
Which is such a powerful combination.
It really is. And the focus is detailing exactly how these very routine, often deeply despised household chores can be radically transformed. And I don't mean just making them a tiny bit more tolerable by putting on some upbeat music, right?
No, not just a distraction technique.
Right. I mean, completely transformed into a profound meditative practice for your own spiritual growth and mental clarity.
I can almost hear the listener right now, perhaps raising an eyebrow at the device they are listening on. They are likely thinking, washing the greasy cod high is meditation. Sweeping the living room floor is a spiritual practice. Please, give me a break.
It sounds a bit far-fetched at first, no?
It does, and honestly, it is a perfectly valid skepticism. We are so deeply conditioned to believe that spiritual growth or mental peace happens somewhere else.
Somewhere quiet and expensive.
Exactly. We think it happens on a secluded mountaintop, or at the very least on a very expensive silent yoga retreat in Rishikesh or Bali. But I promise you, by the time we conclude our discussion today, we are going to offer you a complete paradigm shift. The peace you are desperately seeking might just be hiding in plain sight, right there in the soapy water of your kitchen sink.
That is the beautiful mission of our deep dive today. We want to provide you, the listener, with the ultimate shortcut to being fully, thoroughly well-informed on this ancient yet deeply practical wisdom.
We want to ensure that after listening to this, you will quite literally never look at a broom, a mop, or a pile of unwashed laundry in the exact same way again.
We are going to give you the tools to change your everyday reality. So let us journey together, moving away from that stressed-out, modern, chaotic kitchen of yours, and transport ourselves, just for a moment, to the serene, perfectly swept courtyards of an ancient Zen monastery.
It is the perfect place to begin setting our foundation, actually, because when we ask anyone to picture a Buddhist monk, the image that immediately springs to mind is usually one of immense, unshakable stillness.
We picture them seated cross-legged, right? On a comfortable, perhaps slightly worn meditation cushion.
Yes, their eyes half closed, back perfectly straight. Maybe there is a stick of sandalwood incense burning softly in the background. We imagine them completely detached from the physical, messy, everyday world.
Right, the classic postcard image of pure, undisturbed tranquility. But the reality of monastic life, the actual day-to-day grit of it, is actually quite different, isn't it?
It is vastly different.
The sources we are looking at highlight a specific daily practice in Zen monasteries called soji, and it has absolutely nothing to do with sitting still on a cushion.
Not a thing.
Every single day, without fail, after their morning meditation and chanting are complete, the entire monastic community engages in this practice of soji. They spend about 20 minutes doing something incredibly ordinary. They clean
From the youngest novice to the absolute eldest master.
everyone. They clean the temple, they scrub the wooden floors, they rake the gravel gardens, they sweep the long, open hallways.
And they do this together in absolute, unbroken silence. The atmosphere is as serious and focused as their seated meditation.
Which is so different from how we clean, right? Usually we are blasting music or yelling at someone to pick up their socks.
Exactly. But what makes Soji entirely different from our frantic Tuesday night dishwashing session is the underlying philosophy of the action. During Soji, you are assigned a very simple, specific task. As you said, it could be raking the gravel path, or it could be drying the wooden bowls from breakfast, or sweeping a particular corridor.
Okay, just one specific thing.
Yes, and the most critical, absolutely non-negotiable rule of this practice is this. You must stop exactly when the bell rings.
See, this is the part that I found so difficult to wrap my head around initially. You stop, regardless of whether the task is actually finished.
Precisely. What's fascinating here is the deliberate, intentional lack of ambition to finish the chore.
Lack of ambition to finish. That goes against everything we are taught.
It does. In our modern productivity-obsessed world, we clean purely to achieve a clean space. The value of the action is entirely located in the outcome.
The shiny floor.
The shiny floor, the empty sink. But in the monastery, if the bell rings and you have only swept half the hallway, you simply put the broom down. A half-swept floor is perfectly fine.
It is.
Yes. There is no guilt. There is no frantic rushing to finish just one more corner before anyone sees. There is no underlying frustration that the job is incomplete. You simply stop, bow to your tool, and move to the next part of the day.
Now wait, I have to push back on this a little bit because I am trying to picture applying this in my actual house. If I am sweeping the living room and I have gathered a nice little pile of dust in the middle of the floor and my mental bell goes off,
You can't just leave it there.
I can't just leave a pile of dirt in the middle of the room. What if guests are coming over in an hour? A half-swept floor isn't going to work in a modern household that actually needs to be clean, is it?
Huh.
How do we reconcile this beautiful monastery ideal with the very real demands of our lives?
It is a brilliant question, and it is exactly where the friction happens when we try to import ancient practices into modern living. See, the monks are not suggesting that you leave a literal pile of dirt in the middle of your living room when guests are arriving.
Okay, thank goodness for that.
The lesson of the bell is not about cultivating a messy house, you see. It is an internal training mechanism. It is about identifying your attachment to the finished state.
Attachment to the finished state. Okay, tell me more about that.
When you are frantically trying to sweep before guests arrive, your blood pressure is up, you are likely snapping at your family members to get out of the way, your mind is racing, you are suffering, essentially, for the sake of the clean floor.
Oh, absolutely. I become a tyrant when people are coming over.
We all do. The Soji practice teaches that the cleaning is not a race to a finish line. If you only have 10 minutes to clean before the guests arrive, you clean mindfully for 10 minutes, and whatever state the house is in when the doorbell rings, you accept it with grace. You let go of the anxiety of the outcome.
Ah, I see. So it is a radical departure from how we operate emotionally. We are so deeply conditioned by a sort of capitalist transactional mindset where the result, the sparkling clean floor, the perfectly empty sink, is the only thing that holds any value.
Exactly. The result is all that matters.
And the process itself, the 20 minutes spent sweeping, is just a painful hurdle we have to jump over to get to the result. We view the time spent doing the chore as wasted time. But Soji completely breaks that conditioning. It is teaching the monks, and by extension teaching us, the profound and I think very difficult art of letting go of outcomes.
Exactly. It forces you, gently but firmly, to find value entirely in the present moment of the doing. If the outcome doesn't matter, if the half-swept floor is just as acceptable internally as the fully swept floor, then all that is left for you to focus on is the quality of your attention while you hold the broom.
How are you standing? How are you breathing?
How are you moving? The chore becomes a mirror for your own mind.
And there is a historical story from the Buddhist texts that the sources brought up, which I thought perfectly beautifully illustrates the power of this. It is the story of a monk named Sutipanthaka.
Yes, a very famous, very moving story.
Now, Sutipanthaka, according to the tradition, was a monk who struggled immensely, and I mean deeply, with traditional learning. While his brother, who was also a monk, was brilliant and could memorize the complex sutras and chants effortlessly, Sutipanthaka could not remember a single line.
He couldn't retain anything.
Nothing. He found seated meditation incredibly difficult. His mind would wander constantly. He was deeply frustrated, and he was actually weeping at the gates of the monastery, feeling he was a total failure at his spiritual path and that he should just go back to secular life.
It is a very touching story because it is so incredibly relatable. We have all felt that inadequacy when trying to learn something that seems to come so easily to others.
Exactly. But then, the story goes, the Buddha himself approaches Sutipanthaka, and instead of giving him a complex philosophical text to study, he gives him a single, extraordinarily simple instruction. He hands him a broom.
Just a broom.
Just a broom, and tells him to just sweep the monastery grounds. And as he sweeps, to repeat a simple phrase, sweep away the dust, remove the dirt. That was it. No complex theology, just sweeping.
Sweep away the dust, remove the dirt.
And so, Sutipanthaka swept, day after day, week after week. And as he swept, feeling the rhythm of the broom, noticing the stubbornness of the dirt, he realized something profound. He realized that the dust on the ground was exactly like the attachments, the anger, the ignorance, and the distractions in his own mind.
The physical act became the spiritual realization.
Yes, he was not just sweeping the physical dust from the stone paths, he was simultaneously cleaning his own mind.
And the culmination of that story is that Sutipanthaka achieved full enlightenment, the absolute highest spiritual goal in that tradition, not while sitting perfectly still on a silk cushion reciting scriptures, but while engaging in the rhythmic, physical, sweaty act of sweeping the floor.
Sweating and sweeping.
He understood the profound metaphor. The dirt is everywhere, it is a constant of the physical world, and the clearing of it is a continuous, mindful practice. Just as the mind constantly generates thoughts and anxieties, and the clearing of those is a continuous practice.
It is so powerful because it democratizes peace. It says you don't need a PhD in philosophy to find enlightenment. You just need a broom and a willingness to pay attention.
A broom and attention, that's really all it takes.
This brings us beautifully to the teachings of the revered Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh. In his incredibly influential and frankly beautiful book, The Miracle of Mindfulness, he has this famous passage about dishwashing. And when I first read it, I had one of those genuine moments where you just have to put the book down and stare at the wall because it hits you so hard.
It is a very striking passage.
He states, very simply, while washing the dishes, one should only be washing the dishes.
It sounds almost laughably obvious at first glance, doesn't it? It sounds like a tautology. Of course you are washing the dishes. What else would you be doing?
Right. What else would I be doing?
But he elaborates on the psychological trap we all inevitably fall into. It is what we might call the cup of tea trap.
Yes. The cup of tea trap? I am so terribly guilty of this. He explains that if we are standing at the sink, hurriedly scrubbing the plates, being aggressive with the sponge, and our mind is fixated entirely on the hot cup of tea or the television show or the comfortable bed that is waiting for us as our reward once the chore is done.
Then we are not actually there at the sink.
We are treating the dishes as a pure nuisance. We are rushing through the present moment because we have deemed it unworthy of our attention. We are treating our actual lived reality in that exact moment as an obstacle to get over.
And the profound tragedy of this, as Thich Nhat Hanh so sharply points out, is what happens when you finally, after all that rushing, get to sit down with your tea.
Because your mind is still racing.
Exactly. Because you have just spent the last 20 minutes actively training your mind to live in the future, actively training your brain to ignore the present and rush to the next thing. By the time you sit down with your tea, your mind will have already moved on to the next thing.
To the emails or the news.
Yes. You will be physically holding the cup, drinking your tea, but your thoughts will be on tomorrow's morning meeting or the emails you need to send or the argument you had yesterday. You'll barely even taste the tea.
You are never actually present for your own life. It is a constant state of living in the next moment. This is the ultimate question we must ask you, the listener, and honestly, we must ask ourselves too. If you cannot bring yourself to be fully present for the washing of the dishes, which is a very safe, simple, tactile experience, How on earth can you expect to be fully present for the so-called important moments in your life?
It's a very challenging question.
When you are sitting with your child, or having dinner with your partner, or taking a walk in a beautiful park, are you actually there? Or are you constantly treating your actual life, the mundane, everyday, second-by-second reality of it, as a barrier to your real life?
Yeah.
Because this moment, right now, standing at the sink holding that soapy sponge, is just as much your real life as a fancy vacation in the mountains. You do not get those minutes back.
It is a very confronting realization. We spend so much of our existence treating our chores as the waiting room of our lives. We think once I get through this annoying waiting room, the doctor will see me, the life will begin. But we fail to realize that the waiting room is the life. The chores are the life.
The chores are the life. Now, I know the profile of our listeners. They are naturally curious. They love a good philosophical insight. They love a Zen story. But they also deeply appreciate evidence.
They want the data.
They are practical people. They're probably sitting there thinking, okay, the philosophy is beautiful. The story of the monk with the broom is very inspiring. But what does the actual science say? Does standing at the sink, paying attention to the soap, actually do anything for me biologically? Or is this just a nice mental trick? Here's where it gets really interesting, because modern neuroscience is stepping in and entirely robustly validating this ancient wisdom.
Absolutely. The physiological impact of bringing deliberate mindfulness to routine activities is not just a psychological placebo effect. It is a highly measurable biological phenomenon. Let's break down the mechanics of the nervous system for a moment in a very practical way.
Please do.
When we are stressed, when we are rushing through the dishes, resenting the mess, worrying about tomorrow's deadlines, maybe clenching our jaw, our sympathetic nervous system is heavily engaged. This is our evolutionary fight-or-flight response.
Right, the system designed to save us from a tiger attack.
Precisely. From an evolutionary standpoint, your brain doesn't know the difference between a looming deadline and a looming predator.
That is so wild to think about. The brain treats an unread email like a tiger.
It really does. So, when you are stressed at the sink, your brain signals the release of high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate is elevated, your breathing becomes shallow, your digestion slows down. You are in a state of physiological alarm. But when you shift your attention entirely away from the abstract worries of the future and ground yourself in the present moment, engaging your physical senses in the simple, rhythmic act of scrubbing the plate, you flip a biological switch. You activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
The famous rest and digest mode.
Exactly. And the moment that parasympathetic nervous system engages, your body undergoes a profound systemic chemical shift. Studies have extensively shown that during mindful engagement with repetitive tasks, heart rate measurably, predictably decreases. Blood pressure drops.
Just from paying attention to the dishes.
Just from paying attention. The production of stress hormones like cortisol is actively curtailed, and the body begins to produce more serotonin and dopamine. You are literally changing your blood chemistry with a sponge.
And the brain mechanics of this are just fascinating to me. When you look at fMRI scans of people practicing this kind of active mindfulness, you see exactly what is happening. By choosing to pay deliberate, focused attention to the present moment, feeling the warmth of the water, smelling the lemon scent of the soap, watching the bubbles form, you are heavily activating your prefrontal cortex.
The executive center.
Yes, this is the sophisticated, evolutionary, newer part of your brain sitting right behind your forehead. It is responsible for high-level decision-making, executive focus, and complex emotional regulation. And as the prefrontal cortex lights up and becomes highly active, it simultaneously sends inhibitory signals to dial down the activity in the amygdala.
Which is the crucial mechanism here, because the amygdala is the brain's primitive alarm system. It is the almond-shaped center deep in the brain that governs fear, anxiety, and the initiation of the stress response.
So the prefrontal cortex is basically telling the amygdala to chill out.
In scientific terms, yes. By simply deliberately paying attention to the sensory experience of the dishes, you are literally giving your brain's fear center a direct command to power down. You are saying, we are safe, we are just washing a plate, there is no tiger.
There is a very specific, fascinating study mentioned in our sources that perfectly illustrates the real-world application of this. Researchers took a group of individuals and instructed them to engage in focused, mindful housework. They gave them specific instructions to notice the smell of the soap, the feeling of the water, the shape of the dishes.
They gave them the framework of mindfulness.
Exactly, and they found that just 20 minutes of this focused, mindful housework lowered the participants' anxiety and stress levels by up to 20%, And they measured this both through self-reporting and by tracking physiological markers. Let's just pause and truly absorb that. A 20% reduction in your daily stress just from doing the sweeping or washing that you absolutely had to do anyway.
It is a remarkable return on investment, practically speaking. You are reclaiming time that you previously considered lost or burdensome and turning it into a therapeutic intervention.
Let's use a very relatable modern analogy here. Think about how we usually spend 20 minutes when we come home exhausted and want to relax. We collapse on the couch, we pull out our smartphones, and we doom scroll, right?
The doom scrolling, we all do it.
We flick through endless, algorithmically generated social media feeds. We consume chaotic, disconnected pieces of information. We inevitably compare our messy lives to the highly curated highlight reels of others. We read stressful news headlines about things we cannot control. We spend 20 minutes doing that, and we stand up feeling drained, mildly anxious, our eyes hurt, and we are arguably more stressed than before we sat down.
It's a net negative for our mental health.
Now compare that to spending those exact same 20 minutes mindfully wiping down your kitchen counters, organizing your spices, and sweeping the floor. The physical time expenditure is identical. 20 minutes is 20 minutes. But the effect on your neural plasticity, on the actual physical wiring of your brain, and on your overall mental health is the exact opposite.
One activity actively degrades your mental well-being and spikes your cortisol. The other actively restores your nervous system and builds your capacity for focus.
That is a very powerful, very sobering way to look at it. You are spending the currency of your time either way. The minutes will pass regardless. It is simply a matter of choosing which activity will nourish your nervous system and which will deplete it. We often think we need to add more things to our schedule to be healthy, add a gym session, add a meditation class. But sometimes it is just about transforming the activities already on our schedule.
Transforming what is already there.
Yes. Right. So we see the very real biological changes happening in the brain. But there is another layer to this research, which transitions us from our internal biology to our relationship with our external physical environment. Because it is not just about what is happening inside our heads. It is about how we interact with the space around us.
Yes, and this requires us to look at the philosophy of space itself. If we connect this to the bigger picture, particularly looking again at Japanese Buddhism and Shinto traditions, there's a fundamental bedrock understanding that human beings are not separate from their environment. We are not isolated, self-contained entities simply moving through a dead, inanimate room.
We are part of the room.
We are in a constant, reciprocal, living dialogue with our surroundings. The energy of the space affects us, and our energy affects the space.
Yeah. We have this brilliant perspective in the sources from Shuga Matsumoto, who is a contemporary Buddhist monk and the author of a wonderful book called A Monk's Guide to a Clean House and Mind. He states very directly that conscious living slowly purifies the mind. But he also issues a rather profound warning, which I think is so relevant to how we consume things today.
His warning about how we treat objects.
Yes. He observes that people who do not respect objects, people who treat everything in their environment as disposable, throwing things around, tossing their clothes on the floor, treating their possessions as meaningless garbage, they eventually, inevitably, stop respecting people as well.
It is a deeply interconnected view of respect, and it makes total psychological sense. How you handle a simple ceramic bowl or how you fold a shirt reflects your baseline capacity for care. If you treat the material world with carelessness, aggression, and a lack of gratitude, you are cultivating those specific neural pathways.
You are practicing carelessness.
Precisely. And that exact same carelessness, that same transactional attitude inevitably seeps into your emotional and social life. You start treating relationships as disposable. Furthermore, there is a very practical, immediate psychological effect of our environment on our psyche. We have a great quote from Rabbi Sher Hirsch, who approaches this from a different tradition but arrives at the exact same conclusion. She notes that when your physical surroundings are cluttered, your emotional and spiritual self is inherently, unavoidably cluttered as well.
Oh, I think every single person listening has experienced that visceral truth. Think about your workspace. When your desk is covered in old papers, 3 half-empty coffee cups, tangled charger wires, and random sticky notes, your brain literally feels just as tangled. You feel low-grade anxiety just looking at it.
You can't even focus on a simple email.
You can't. But then you take 10 minutes. You clean that desk, you wipe down the surface, you organize the space, you throw away the trash, and suddenly you sit down and you can breathe again. You can actually think clearly. The outer order directly manufactures an inner calm. It is almost like magic, but it's just psychology.
It does. It reduces the visual noise that your brain has to constantly process, freeing up cognitive bandwidth. But there is a harsh reality to chores that we must confront here, and it is the very reason why they frustrate us so much in the first place. It is the reason we resent them, and that is the fact that they are never, ever actually done.
Yes, the great unending tragedy of housekeeping.
Indeed. The dust will always return, usually by the next morning. The dishes will inevitably pile up again immediately after the very next meal. The laundry basket is a magically refilling entity. You empty it, and 3 hours later, there are socks in it again. If you approach household chores with the modern mindset of permanently solving a problem, you are setting yourself up for a lifetime of bitter daily disappointment. You cannot solve dishes.
You cannot solve dishes. That is brilliant. It is the myth of the finished state. We think, if I could just get the house perfectly clean, I will be happy. And Gary Thorpe touches upon this beautifully in his book, Sweeping Changes. He writes, "The joy comes not from trying to keep things forever, but from keeping them well."
That quote is the absolute essence of the practice. Accepting the endless, cyclical nature of chores is nothing short of a masterclass in accepting the impermanence of life itself. We suffer so much, and I mean genuine psychological suffering, because we are always waiting for our lives to be completely in order.
We really do. We put our happiness on hold.
We think, once the house is renovated, once the mortgage is finally paid off, once I get that promotion at work, once the kids are in college, then I will finally be at peace. Then I will relax.
But it's a mirage, because once you reach that milestone, the goalpost moves. The only moment we actually possess, the only place peace can ever be practically found, is in the now. The cycle of dirt and cleaning, of hunger and cooking, of tiredness and sleeping is the very cycle of life. To fight it is to fight being alive.
And this realization, once you truly internalize it, opens the door to perhaps the most transformative aspect of this entire philosophy, the gratitude shift.
Yes. Let us talk about this cognitive reframe. Because when you are standing in front of that mountain of dishes at 7 p.m., the absolute default emotion is resentment. You think, why do I have to clean all these plates? I'm so tired. But if we apply this gratitude shift, we force ourselves to look at the situation differently. We look at the dirty plate with the leftover food on it, and we realize washing this dish means I had food to eat today. My family did not go hungry.
It shifts everything.
Folding this massive, intimidating pile of laundry means I'm fortunate enough to own clothes, and I have access to a machine and clean running water to wash them.
Sweeping the dust off the floor means you have a floor to sweep. It means you have a roof over your head, a safe shelter to protect you and your family from the elements. It is a profoundly humbling realization when you really sit with it. When you begin to actively associate the physical act of cleaning with the explicit acknowledgement of what you possess, you literally rewire your brain's neural pathways to recognize abundance rather than scarcity and resentment. The chore transforms almost instantly from a burdensome tax on your time into a quiet, physical celebration of your daily blessings.
I love how you phrase that. A quiet celebration of your blessings. It changes the entire energy of the room. You are no longer acting as a victim of your messy house. You step into the role of a caretaker of your abundant life. You're tending to your blessings.
Precisely. It is a shift from I have to do this to I am fortunate to be able to care for this.
So we have explored the ancient philosophy. We understand the modern neuroscience and the biology of the stress response. We've discussed the mindset shift of gratitude. Now, let us get incredibly practical. Let us give our listener the absolute blueprint. How do we actually do this on a Tuesday night? Our sources, pulling from various texts, break down the methodology into 5 universal foundations of mindful chores. These elements appear across various spiritual traditions. Let us walk through them step by step.
The first foundation is perhaps the most crucial because it sets the stage for everything else. Set an intention. Before you even touch the sponge, before you pick up the broom, before you do anything, you must pause. It only takes 5 seconds. You stand at the sink, you take 1 deep breath, and you silently state your purpose. It could be as simple as, I am now going to create a clean space for my family, or I am dedicating these next 10 minutes entirely to being fully present nowhere else.
It is like drawing a clear line in the sand, mentally separating the chaotic, rushing energy of your workday from this dedicated, sacred pocket of time. It tells your brain, we are doing something different now. Foundation number 2, become aware of your breath. Now, we hear this in formal yoga classes and seated meditation all the time, but it applies perfectly and perhaps even more practically here. As you begin the physical chore, deliberately sync your inhales and exhales with your physical movements.
It creates a beautiful grounding rhythm. For example, you inhale deeply as you reach for the plate. You exhale slowly as you wipe it clean. You inhale as you push the broom forward. You exhale as you pull it back. The breath becomes the physical anchor that ties your wandering mind and your moving body to the exact same moment in time. When they are synced, it is very difficult to worry about tomorrow.
Then we move to foundation number 3. Engage all your senses. This is the fun part. This is where you forcefully pull your mind away from the abstract, floating worries of the future and plunge it directly into the gritty, physical reality of right now. Notice the temperature of the water on your hands. Is it warm? Is it slightly scalding? Adjust it. Notice the texture of the sponge. Feel the rough, abrasive side against your thumb versus the soft, porous side. Listen. Actually listen to the sound of the water splashing against the ceramic, the rhythmic, scratchy sweeping of the broom bristles against the tile floor. Notice the sharp citrus smell of the dish soap.
By consciously flooding your brain with intense sensory input from the present moment, you leave very little cognitive bandwidth for those stressful, repetitive, anxious thoughts to take hold. You crowd them out with reality. Which brings us to foundation number 4. Notice mind wandering, and this is the most important part. Do this without judgment.
See, this is exactly where people trip up. I know I do. Because people think, okay, I'm trying to be mindful of the dishes, I am feeling the water, but oh, I just remembered I need to call my mother back, and did I pay the Wi-Fi bill? And then they get incredibly frustrated with themselves and think, I am terrible at this, my mind is too busy, I have failed at the meditation.
And this is something I really, really want to emphasize for the listeners. People falsely equate losing focus with failure. But noticing that your mind has wandered off to the Wi-Fi bill and then gently, patiently, without getting angry at yourself, bringing your attention back to the feeling of the soap in the water, that action is the meditation. The returning is the practice.
The returning is the practice itself.
Exactly. I like to think of it in fitness terms. Every single time your mind drifts to the past or the future, and you catch it, and you lovingly guide it back to the present sensory experience, you are doing a bicep curl for your awareness muscle. If your mind never wandered, if you were perfectly focused 100% of the time, you would have nothing to exercise against. There would be no resistance. The wandering mind is not the enemy. It is the resistance training necessary for your focus to grow stronger.
I absolutely love that analogy. The bicep curl for the brain, it takes all the guilt out of getting distracted. And finally, foundation number 5. Release attachment to finishing. As we learn from the monks doing the Soji practice, you must continuously remind yourself that the true core value of the practice is in the doing, not the done. You are not rushing to cross the finish line. The journey, the act of cleaning, is the destination itself.
So, with those 5 foundations in mind, how do we apply them to the very specific, sometimes messy chores we all face every week?
Let us break it down into chore-specific meditations. Let's start with dishwashing, the absolute classic. When you approach the sink, try to treat each dish, even if it is just a cheap, scratched plastic Tupperware container, as if it is a priceless, fragile, historical artifact. Feel the weight of it in your hands. Adjust the water temperature so it is deeply pleasing and soothing to your skin. As you scrub, physically watch the food particles and the grease wash away down the drain, and use that strong visual as a symbol for clearing away the cluttered, sticky thoughts from your own mind. As the dish becomes clean and clear, imagine your mind becoming clean and clear.
It is a very satisfying, tangible, physical metaphor. And what about sweeping or mopping? These tasks are inherently rhythmic and repetitive, involving the whole body, which makes them excellent for physical grounding. As you engage in the repetitive motion, you can use that physical rhythm to anchor a silent internal mantra. With every sweep of the broom to the left, you might think to yourself, may I be happy. With every step forward, may I be peaceful. The physical repetition reinforces the mental intention, creating a moving meditation.
Then there is folding laundry. Now, I have a personal nemesis here. Fitted sheets. I hate fitted sheets. They are the enemy of peace. They never fold into a square. They just become a crumpled ball of frustration. I usually have to listen to a podcast just to distract myself from the misery of folding them. But if we apply in the practice here, laundry is a very tactile chore. Notice the texture of the different fabrics, the rough, heavy sturdiness of denim jeans, the delicate softness of a cotton towel. Smell the freshness of the detergent on the clean clothes. And here's a lovely micro-practice from the sources. After you complete folding a neat, tidy item, whether it's a shirt or even a difficult fitted sheet, take one deliberate, deep, cleansing breath before picking up the next wrinkled piece from the pile. You are creating little intentional pockets of stillness between your actions.
Even when you are frustrated by the fitted sheet, noticing that frustration without judgment is part of the practice. And moving beyond just cleaning, even caring for plants, Whether it is a sprawling outdoor garden or just a single, slightly wilty potted pothos on your apartment windowsill is a profound practice. When you water a plant, you are engaging directly with life. Notice the vibrant color of the leaves. Touch the soil with your fingers to see if it is dry or damp. Watch carefully as the water pools on the surface and then slowly soaks into the dark earth. Recognize that this living thing is responding directly to your care, your attention, and your time. It connects you immediately to the rhythms of the natural world right there inside your concrete apartment.
Okay, so we have the philosophy, we have the rigorous science, we have the step-by-step 5 foundation guide. But let us be deeply, brutally realistic for a moment. We are all creatures of habit. And building a new habit, especially one that requires us to actively slow down in a world that constantly demands we speed up, naturally triggers resistance. How does the listener actually start doing this tomorrow morning without feeling immediately overwhelmed and giving up by Wednesday?
The absolute key, and I cannot stress this enough, is to start small. Do not attempt to clean your entire house mindfully from top to bottom on the first day. You will exhaust yourself, you will get frustrated, and you will never try it again. Pick just one small, highly specific chore to serve as your daily mindfulness anchor.
A great example from the sources is the Japanese practice of mindfully making the bed the very first thing in the morning. It takes perhaps 2 minutes, 3 at most. But if you do it with full, undivided intention, smoothly pulling the sheets tight, fluffing the pillows deliberately, clearing the surface, you have started your day with a definitive victory of presence. You have set the tone for the next 12 hours.
Visual cues are also incredibly helpful, especially in the beginning. We are forgetful creatures. We default to our rushing habits easily. Place a small sticky note right on your kitchen faucet or wrap a piece of colored tape around the handle of your broom. It doesn't need to be an essay, just a single word like breathe or present, or even just the smiley face. It serves as a pattern interrupt. When you are rushing to the sink, your brain sees the note and it interrupts the autopilot. And crucially, when you engage in this anchor chore, try to do it in absolute silence.
Yes, resist the urge to plug in your headphones. I know it's hard. No music, no audiobooks, no podcasts, except ours, of course. But maybe listen to us before or after you practice this specific technique. No television blaring the news in the background. Silence is difficult because it forces you to actually hear your own thoughts. But that is the only way to practice that mental bicep curl. You have to hear the distraction to let it go. But let us troubleshoot the excuses, because the human mind is brilliant at fighting back against change. Excuse number one, and we hear this all the time, I say it all the time, I simply do not have the time to do my chores slowly and mindfully. I am too busy. I have kids, I have a job, I have to hustle.
It is the most common and seemingly most logical defense mechanism. But let us look at the actual mathematics of the situation. You are already doing the chore. You have to wash the dishes regardless of whether you do it angrily or mindfully. You are not adding a new 20-minute seated meditation session to your already packed schedule. You are simply transforming the exact 20 minutes you are already spending standing at the sink. In fact, by removing the mental drag of resentment and by removing the distraction of trying to multitask by watching a video while you wash, you often become much more efficient.
That is so deeply true. The physical time elapsed is the exact same, but the energetic cost to your body is vastly different. Excuse number two. My mind is just too busy for this. I try to be mindful, I try to focus on the soap, but I just think about work the whole time. My brain isn't built for meditation.
We touched on this earlier with the bicep curl, but it is worth exploring with another beautiful classic analogy. People erroneously think mindfulness means achieving a blank, empty, silent mind. It does not. Thoughts will come. Your mind is biologically designed to secrete thoughts just as your salivary glands secrete saliva. Think of your thoughts like clouds passing across a vast sky. The sky does not panic when a dark storm cloud appears. The sky does not resist the cloud. It does not try to push it away or yell at it. It simply provides the open space for the cloud to drift by. When an anxious thought about work arises while you are sweeping, do not get angry at yourself. Just observe the thought, recognize it as a cloud, and let it pass on its own, returning your physical gaze to the bristles of the broom.
And then there's excuse number three, which is the really gritty practical one. Okay, washing a delicate teacup or watering a plant is nice and aesthetic, but some chores are just objectively terribly gross. I cannot be zen, I cannot be peaceful while I am scrubbing a filthy, foul-smelling toilet.
Ah, the toilet. This is actually a very famous concept in Zen monasteries. It is considered the ultimate Zen test. If you can maintain your equanimity, your calm center, your dignified breathing, and your mindfulness while you are kneeling down scrubbing a dirty toilet, then you have developed a true psychological superpower. Because if you can find peace and maintain your center there, in the face of literal physical disgust, you can maintain your center during life's most difficult, messy, and deeply unpleasant emotional trials. The bathroom is not an obstacle to your spiritual growth. It is the ultimate advanced training ground.
I love that perspective. The bathroom is the ultimate dojo. It really reframes the worst chore in the house. So what does this all mean for the listener in the long run? If they actually start doing this, if they anchor their mindfulness to the morning dishes or the evening sweeping, and they do their mental bicep curls day after day, how will they know it is actually working?
Let's extrapolate on the signs of a deepening practice, because it's not just about having clean plates. The most profound sign of success is what we call the spillover effect. You will know it is working because you will not just be more peaceful while standing at the kitchen sink. The neuroplasticity you are building will begin to affect your whole life. You will suddenly find yourself, perhaps weeks later, sitting in terrible, gridlocked rush hour traffic. And instead of gripping the steering wheel until your knuckles are white, cursing under your breath, and spiking your blood pressure, you will notice your frustration and you will simply take a breath. You will find yourself in a tense, difficult conversation with a frustrating colleague, and instead of instantly reacting defensively and escalating the argument, you will have developed the mental spaciousness to pause, to truly listen, and to respond thoughtfully.
It is the cultivation of a deep, unshakable equanimity. You start to possess this underlying bedrock calmness regarding the temporary, cyclical nature of everything in life. You clean the floor, it gets dirty, you clean it again. You cook the food, it gets eaten, you cook again. You realize that everything in life is cyclical. Everything requires maintenance, and you finally stop fighting reality.
You stop resisting the basic, unavoidable facts of existence. And that cessation of resistance, that surrender to the reality of the present moment, is the very definition of profound peace.
As we bring this incredible deep dive to a close, let us mentally return to that kitchen sink where we started our journey today. That 7 p.m. mountain of dishes waiting for you after a long day. We have covered a massive amount of ground. We've looked at ancient monastery practices in Japan, the neuroplasticity of the amygdala, the philosophy of treating our environment with respect, and highly practical step-by-step techniques. But the core takeaway, the golden nugget here, is beautifully, radically simple. You do not need to book a flight to a monastery in the Himalayas to find yourself. You do not need expensive meditation gear or a perfectly silent retreat. Your spiritual awakening, your daily dose of profound nervous system regulating peace is waiting for you right there, right now, in your mop, your broom, and your simple kitchen sponge.
There is a profoundly famous ancient Zen proverb that I think beautifully encapsulates everything we have discussed unpacked today. It says, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." The external physical tasks of your life do not magically disappear when you become more mindful or spiritually evolved. The dishes still absolutely need washing. The floors still need sweeping. The transformation we are talking about does not happen to the external world. The transformation happens entirely, completely within you.
The chores remain perfectly ordinary, but your internal experience of them becomes absolutely extraordinary.
However, this raises an important question, something we have not yet touched upon, but which feels incredibly urgently relevant for our modern listener to mull over as they go about their week. We have spent this entire hour talking deeply about our physical environment, our floors, our laundry, our physical ceramic dishes. But what about our digital environment?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating, slightly terrifying avenue to explore.
Think about it. If interacting mindfully, slowly, and deliberately with our physical space cleanses the mind, measurably reduces our cortisol levels, and builds positive neuroplasticity, could we not apply these exact same 5 foundations to our digital chores? Think about the low-grade, constant anxiety of a cluttered email inbox with thousands of unread messages. Think about the heavy mental weight of unorganized digital files scattered across your desktop, or endlessly, mindlessly scrolling through thousands of old duplicate photos on your phone trying to find one picture. If we approach the clearing of our inbox with the same deliberate intention, the same synchronized breathing, the same single-tasking focus as we do washing a fragile teacup, could it hold the exact same profound potential for spiritual equanimity? Can we, in essence, chop wood and carry water in the fast-paced digital age?
That is a brilliant, brilliant provocation to leave you with. Can deleting old spam emails and organizing your cloud storage become your new daily soji practice? Can you do a mental bicep curl while unsubscribing from newsletters? It is certainly something very real to ponder the next time you open your laptop and feel that familiar wave of digital dread. But for now, let us start where we stand, in the physical world. We invite you, our dear listener, to try just one conscious mindful chore tomorrow morning. Just pick one. Feel the water, notice your breath. Let the thoughts pass like clouds, and just see what happens to your day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.